Hello, everybody. I am Zenith Rule, and welcome back to the Disney Debate, where Kat McBarry, Y2 Staller, and I discuss Disney films and Disney products. Now, today is a little bit different, however, because things are changing with the show. I know, changes. It changes very.
Change is bad and scary, and I don't like it.
Yeah, change is something that not many of us like, but the show is changing. Not the format of the show. We're still keeping the same type of show that we've done for years now, for quite a few years. I think it's been 6 years now.
Yeah, it has, Jesus.
But over the course of these 6 years, things have changed. We've gotten a lot better at conducting this show. We've gotten a lot better at, chemistry and all that other stuff. We've gotten better audio equipment, and the cast of the show has changed a little bit. We actually have a few different incarnations of the show right now. The first one ran for about 40 or some odd episodes.
About 50 episodes.
About 50 episodes or so. The first 10 of which were not very good, mostly because that was back when our audio equipment sucked. But it was just something fun that we were doing at the time, and so we enjoyed it. It was fun. It was just something to do, and it got surprisingly very popular among a lot of people. That's a lot of people actually reached out to us, and they made the Disney Debate Facebook group, and we started conducting business from there, and gradually it grew more popular until our first year anniversary episode on Recess School's Out. Now, everything up until that point, was fine. I had, no troubles doing the show, but the problems started happening immediately afterwards because Blip went under, and that's when we had to figure out where the show was going. And after all these problems behind the scenes, not knowing where we wanted to put the show, because at the time we didn't know if a podcast would work on YouTube, which is obviously not the case, because we're getting a lot more viewers on YouTube now than we ever did on Blip. But after a while, we decided, all right, we'll let it rest for a little bit, and we'll see how we feel in the future. Flash forward a few years, and after I had, got a few things situated, and I had put all the past episodes up on YouTube, I brought Eric back on to basically help me with the second incarnation of the show. We wanted to try to continue it on because a lot of people in the Facebook group really wanted the show to continue, and we all really wanted to continue doing it, and it was really unfortunate what happened with Blip, and none of us liked it. So Eric agreed to come on, and we tried something new. Now, I still stand by the fact that the Saving Mr. Banks episode that we made as our first episode back was fantastic. I think it was extremely well edited. It was a lot of fun to make. I still think that's one of my best editing jobs in terms of a podcast. But the thing is, it was not edited as a podcast episode. Like, that was, I did full-on, footage from the show and, all this other stuff. And we started getting copyright issues for that. And, for the next 2 episodes that Eric was a part of, not only were we having copyright issues, but Eric and I were also having scheduling conflicts. And while I think that the short-lived second incarnation of the show was a little bit too short, I still think it was very, very well produced. I still had a lot of fun with it. It just took a lot more time, and for a podcast, that's something we couldn't do. So we went back to the drawing board. For the third incarnation, I went back to Kat. I said, I really want to get this going off the ground again. I tried something different. It didn't really work. Let's get the gang back together. and we got the band back together. In addition to
okay, sure.
if you really want to, I mean, geez, you're fat, but okay.
You don't have to beg, God. Not like I was doing anything important anyway.
So our third incarnation lasted from immediately after the Johnny Tremaine episode. The Johnny Tremaine episode was the last one with just me and Eric. And from then up until now, our third incarnation has been straight podcast, talking about the stuff that we love. And we've run it successfully for, I believe, the past 2 years. I believe we brought it back 2 years ago.
Holy shit, has it been that long?
Yeah, it's been a while, because we put out 20 episodes last year, and we started the New Year's before, so it's just we've been steadily producing content, and we've had a lot of fun. We really, really did, and we're not discontinuing the show. We're going to continue it, but there's kind of a change here. You see, our friend, our co-host, our good buddy Y2 Staller, the tall man, E-Rock, Rock Teardrop, all the different things that I, make his name out to be. He is being appointed as part of the, the council down there?
Yeah, he's a chairman of the town that we live in now. So he's a government man who works for the government.
And while he has had scheduling conflicts in the past, we've been able to kind of work around that as best we could over the past 2 years, splitting up episodes when necessary, and we've been able to make it work. But now that he is a government man in addition to everything else, and he's helping the people and whatnot, he decided that, it might be best if he stepped down from the show, and we wish him all the best. He's one of our very good friends, and he's always welcome back, whenever he wants to come back, to do a cameo or whatever on my main show, but you won't be seeing him as a regular host anymore.
Yeah, he just has to bring a tribute first in order to be let back on. Bring me the head of Michael Eisner.
So yeah, we have now entered, as of this episode, the fourth incarnation of the Disney debate. This is the fourth regeneration of the Doctor, and as such, Eric has now regenerated into
short-bearded Eric.
into a very bald man. Now, this new co-host, we have brought him on before as a guest, and he was always going to be a part of the 101 Dalmatians episode because he requested this years ago. But everyone, I would like to welcome our good friend, Kat's husband, Doug One Sat Morn. How's it going?
Hey, good to be here.
What are you doing in my house?
I live here. I'm your husband.
I don't remember you paying rent. Hi, honey.
And I would also like to re-welcome Kat back to the podcast. We could not do this without you.
Of course not.
But yeah, welcome back, Kat. Welcome to the podcast, Doug. I'm Zenith Rule, for those who have not been following my channel for the past 7 or 8 years I've been doing this. Wow. Yeah, we've been doing things for a long time. And before we begin, I do want to really thank my co-hosts, Kat McBarry and Doug McBarry, because they have been my behind-the-scenes help for everything I've done, especially lately. This year, when I really put everything into high gear and started editing like a maniac so I could get out at least 2 major videos a month, they stepped up to the plate. They asked me what they could do, and so they've been helping me looking over scripts, helping me, look over videos to see if they're okay. They've been such a huge help, and they're the best friends I've ever had. So thank you guys so much.
Aw.
Oh, stop it. I'm going bright red.
I'm getting verklempt. Talk amongst yourselves and give me a topic.
But yeah, we've been introducing this far too long. I just really needed to bring this up because things have changed, and going forward, this is going to be our regular group. We may have guest hosts every now and again. I know one person who was on the show before that wants to come back. We're going to talk about that. But anyway, this is our new crew, the crazy crew, the Two Live crew.
Yay.
Hey.
Anyway, today we're talking about 101 Dalmatians as the start of our 101 Dalmatians marathon. We're going to go for 5 episodes, 5 different podcasts talking about each individual Dalmatians film. Now, you might be saying, wait a second, there's only 2 animated films. Well, there's also 2 live-action films, and there's the TV show. And we're going to attempt to do the TV show this time. Like, in the past, since our Adventures in Wonderland episode, I've been kind of hesitant to doing TV shows, mostly just because having to watch so many episodes, and just the fact that it didn't really go over well, because Adventures in Wonderland was a TV show made for very young kids. It was not made for us, and I don't think the episode went over very well, even though I still stand by the fact that I don't like the show. I think going forward from that episode, I wanted to make sure that we did things really better in terms of TV shows. So this is going to be our second attempt in quite a long time. But anyway, today we're going to start off with 101 Dalmatians and Miss Cat.
Yes?
Why don't you give us a brief summation of the Dalmatian plantation sensation that is 101 Dalmatians?
Truly an inspiration.
One word. One word. Puppies! But yeah, there's a bit more to it than that. And actually, this film is a lot darker than I remember it. 101 Dalmatians is about these 2 Dalmatian dogs who meet and get their respective owners together, and they start a family. Unfortunately, one of their owners' friends, the villainous Cruella de Vil, decides to kidnap their puppies along with a bunch of other puppies and make them into a dog fur coat. So now it's up to the parents to track down their puppies and rescue them before Cruella, basically skins them all alive. For kids! Yeah, this film is a lot, like I said, a lot darker than I remember it. And it's so weird because everyone remembers it as this cute little film about, dogs and all these Dalmatian puppies and everything. And it's like, well, when you really look at it, it has so many elements. Like, there's kidnapping, there's attempted murder, there's attempted vehicular manslaughter, there's animal cruelty. And it's like, we've seen some dark stuff on Disney, but it's like, this is like painting a rainbow over, over the Necronomicon, basically. Well, sort of. I wouldn't say that extreme, but I don't know. This brought back a lot of memories, and I'm like, why am I suddenly pissing myself right now watching Cruella driving?
I was saying that it's scarred in my memory forever.
I think the first thing to talk about before even the story in this case, because while we normally start with the story, I think the thing to focus on for this film is the animation. And it is so different from the last animated film that we did. I'm actually trying to remember. Kat, do you remember what the last animated film we talked about was? Was that Sleeping Beauty?
Yes, the last animated film we reviewed was Sleeping Beauty, and it's actually because of that movie that we got this style of animation for 101 Dalmatians. Because, as we mentioned in that podcast, the animation for that was, you know, first off, it was very beautiful. I still to this day maintain it's one of Disney's most beautifully animated movies, at least for that time period. Unfortunately, it was also very expensive and very time consuming. And it didn't help the fact that the movie didn't do that well in theaters, which is the reason why we've had a bit of a gap in terms of like animation. So, of course, when they decided to do 101 Dalmatians, they knew that they would go bankrupt if they attempted to hand draw this movie because let's face it, trying to hand draw like over 100 dogs, spotted dogs at that would have taken at least a decade. So that is where the new animation technique comes in, which will pretty much dominate the animated films for the next 2 decades. Doug, why don't you tell us about it?
So, introduced for this movie for time saving, they actually decided to use Xerox technology in order to replicate all of the puppies. So that way, they could do a bunch of puppies at once in the same style, and they wouldn't have to, waste as much time drawing them each individually.
It's like it's a good move, especially for this movie, because it definitely saves on time. Um, my issue with it, I kind of call this the beginning of the end, sort of in terms of the old era of Disney. I call this the lazy era of animation because anybody who's watched compilations on YouTube of clips from both 101 Dalmatians and Sword in the Stone and Jungle Book and Robin Hood. Yeah, if you look at them all side by side, they all use the exact same animation. And in fact, they reuse cells from movies before that just to make up just to sort of, fill in spots where they don't have to animate themselves. I mean, I'm pretty sure by the time we get to Robin Hood, it'll be so apparent, just how dominating this technique of animation had become. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, it's okay, it's good for a kid's film, but ultimately it's lazy. And when I was watching this, I could probably count just how many scenes repeated themselves constantly that were either flipped or recolored or, whatever. I'm pretty sure only about 50% of this movie was like original hand-drawn animation.
And I think there's a plus and a minus to it. I think the plus is these characters are still very expressive. Mm-hmm. Like I think a lot of it is the angular like lines and stuff that they use with these characters, and it is a little bit different than it was before. But there was one thing I noticed, especially with Cruella de Vil. When she was moving, a lot of the lines in her jacket, you could see like the sketchiness of them, and like it felt like it was partially unfinished sometimes when I looked at it closely, because it didn't flow like traditional animation. It looked more a sketch than real.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure all the animation, like the good animation, went into Cruella herself because she's such a defined character, and it's not helped by the fact that she wears mostly white, which is hard in terms of animation because obviously you're gonna make a mistake here or there. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I kind of like the flow on her because it's good to draw a villain with like defining lines because it shows just how intimidating and menacing they are. So I kind of forgive it for that in a way.
Yeah.
It's when it's like with the other like background characters or the good guys and stuff. That's when it doesn't look as good.
Yeah, I'll say that I've owned 101 Dalmatians on VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, And I remember when I first saw it on DVD, I started distinctly noticing a lot of lines coming to the forefront, on like, especially on the Dalmatians. So yeah, I definitely noticed that, more as the technology improved.
Yeah, I think this is a film that was meant for VHS. Unfortunately, the enhanced quality sometimes makes it a little bit more blurry, more grainy. I especially noticed when Cruella drives through the snow and like her car falls to the side of the bridge and she drives through the snow. The snow kind of looked more sketchy, and a lot of the like whites and stuff looked more sketchy. And to be fair, they do look fine. It's just a very different style, and it almost feels more animated than real, which, I mean, obviously is kind of a weird criticism for an animated film. But compared to everything else, like, the environments actually look really, really well done. I love the work on the characters because of how expressive they are and how, what they did with Cruella as a character and her specific animation is fantastic, especially during the chase scene. And the opening sequence in particular is just so memorable. Like, it almost feels like Monsters, Inc. took this as inspiration when they went, many years later, because this opening sequence is just so memorable. Like, just the title sequence. This is the first title sequence that Disney has produced that I found memorable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that most definitely. Like, and I kind of forget that, considering we've been reviewing sequels to stuff as well. But yeah, in terms of the original era Disney, this definitely has the best opening. And it's like, you don't even notice that the credits are in it half the time. You're too busy looking at the Dalmatians just, just running around and blending in with the background and everything.
Or just the general artwork, too.
Yeah, the general artwork and the fact that, like, they show animations, like, stills, and then they show them sketching them, and then they show, like, the color adding in. Like, the stuff that they do with this opening is so far ahead of its time. It's just fascinating to me because, like, for a studio that, they had these opening credits, but they normally were just title sequences with boring backgrounds with nothing to them. This is the first time that I've seen in our podcast where they actually went above and beyond and showed all this animation. They had this new animation technique. They used it. And as much as we stated the negative, I do want to state the positives here in the fact that they showcase so much on screen at once. The movement seems much more smooth than before. It's still not up to the quality of today, but, like, it's smooth, it's expressive. They're able to showcase a wider range of emotions, and when they fall into the pond, the two humans feel just real. Like, it feels realistic to me, especially the way their hats are drooping over their faces. And for the time, I think this animation worked for the most part. Although there is one detriment that I haven't mentioned, and it's kind of in relation to the sound. The lip flaps do not really mesh up all the time. They try to hide this a lot, whereas there's a point where, like, I'm forgetting his name. Why am I forgetting his name? Roger.
Right. There's
a point where Roger looks out the window and sees Cruella de Vil, and obviously it's dubbed off screen because you don't see him. You see him, like, it's basically him voicing things in mid-sentence, but he's turning as he's talking, and you can clearly see his mouth is not moving, and it's a lot of stuff like that. A lot of times, yes, it does match up, but maybe it's because of the style of animation, maybe because the animation is slower. I noticed that the lip flaps don't often match up. And to be fair, Snow White does the same thing, even worse, where the lip flaps, you could see that their mouths are completely closed, and they're talking, and it's better here, but I feel like there's still kind of a gap. Doug, what do you think?
I mean, honestly, I've probably been so jaded by seeing the movie so many times, I've kind of ignored that. Um, I mean, honestly, I'm just so engrossed in the animation that I guess it never really occurs to me.
I mean, I kind of also attribute that to, like I said, the fact that they reuse scenes. So there are parts where they will reuse a scene from earlier in the film and flip it, and they will either mute the volume or they will add in words, and obviously you can tell that that's not what the scene was animated for. So I have noticed it in that regard. I mean, it's not too distracting, but like I said, if you've seen the movie as many times as we have, it's really easy to spot.
Yeah. And like I said, it's not a big problem, but it's something that I do notice. And it's part of the film not aging gracefully, or as gracefully as I would like. I think overall the film, animation wise, still holds up.
Oh, definitely.
Like I think the animation is one of the standout features. That's why I wanted to talk about it first. I do think that the animation is great most of the time. It's just that there are portions that just don't hold up to today.
Well, one of the weird things is that apparently Walt Disney did not like this style of animation, but it's kind of his fault that it happened. Because when the art director Ken Anderson, proposed the idea of Xerox to Walt, by that point, he was all disappointed because of how bad because Sleeping Beauty didn't do that well and how much money his company lost, that he's like, do whatever you can just to save cost. But then when the resulting product showed up, he's like, okay, this isn't happening again. This guy is never directing again. But then unfortunately, by that point, Walt was starting to get sick, so he wasn't able to oversee things, so they ended up using Xerox in future products anyway. So that unfortunately became the norm, and Walt ultimately said, you know what, it's fine, do what you gotta do, because unfortunately by that point he wasn't giving a crap anymore. So it's kind of sad when you think about it, because on the one hand, I don't think the art's as bad as Walt probably thought it was, because I know like his particular taste, he wanted to make films that each had their own unique style. So I'm pretty sure like doing basically a cookie carbon copy style like this was not his cup of tea. But honestly, they could have done way worse.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to know that eventually he warmed up to it. Although it's a shame that, the only reason he agreed to it is like, it's cheap, just do it.
I do think it stands out, and I mean, it's unfortunate that he wasn't really approving of it, but, it turned out in the end, and I think this is, animation-wise, one of Disney's better films. And I do want to briefly touch upon the dubbing before we get into the story. Now, this also has a different sound quality than some of the previous films of the era. From what it sounds like, it sounds more like radio than it does a normal dub at the time.
I would believe it, honestly, because I was looking up the voice actors, and a lot of them actually were hired because they did radio. So I'm assuming when they were switching over to a new sound quality, that's kind of what they were going for. Because I'm trying to think of the time period this takes place in, because obviously it takes place during the time of radios, so I guess it's appropriate.
They said that the book was written in like 1952? No, 56, excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, radio would have been big at that time, so I guess it fits.
Mm-hmm. It fits with the time period, especially since they are watching TV in the film. Like it's one of those old style radio type shows, kind of like the Lone Ranger almost. So it does, like, the sound quality very much fits with that. And if they wanted to show this as a radio show, they totally could. I think the dubbing is actually distinct. I mean, a lot of the songs kind of remind me a little bit of like, kind of crooners like Bing Crosby, only a different audio quality. Like just it's hard to describe because radio back then, that sound it's hard to replicate, and I still think it still really holds up. Sound wise, I think it's very pleasant to the ears. It doesn't feel dated.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, pretty much every song in this is basically a radio jingle when you think about it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we should just discuss the songs briefly before we go into the film, since there's not too many of them?
Yeah, there's only what 3 in the entire thing. Nah.
Yeah, there's only 3. So first, okay, this is the first time we've had a chance to talk about songs in a Disney film in so long. I just want to talk about them because we haven't had a chance to talk about any of the songs, and even when there has been a song in a live action film, it's left no impact. So let's start off with Cruella de Vil. One of the best villain songs ever created. Would you agree with that, Doug?
I'd certainly agree with that. Uh, and I love singing it. I love, I just love how much of an asshole they make Roger out to be during the song, as he's like, stomping around, or he's like messing around with Anita. And then you see like kind of the foreboding, shadowy figure of Cruella entering the door. And it's just like, it's so creepy, but it's so fun.
The song actually kind of reminds me of The Grinch. And it's kind of the same style when you think about it. It's basically a song about just how freaking evil the character is. And I think that's kind of part of what makes it great.
What I like about it too is like it's one of those songs that is so catchy, and he comes with it on the fly. Like he was already writing the melody, and he sees Cruella de Vil and he thinks to himself, "Wait a second." He comes up with these lyrics on the spot, and he's having so much fun with them. Like the animation is the most expressive in this scene with all the different like faces and stuff he's making. And then he goes back up into his room and he starts playing different instruments as she's coming in the door. And then he comes up with these lyrics, and like, they're so catchy. They're so expressive. They're so the way they describe things is, it's just so vivid. Like the whole imagery of Cruella as a spider, something that watches you underneath a rock. Like you think she's just like a devil woman, but she's really nothing more than a petty, spider. And I think that really exemplifies her character. Like this song is one of the best villain songs in Disney history, simply because it embodies what the villain is all about in just such a short amount of time.
Yeah, like on the DVD and stuff, they've got like the special features. I've seen like the deleted songs for Cruella de Vil. It's like they really, really wanted to, push the devil image. And I mean, it's not even just, isolated with the song. It's like all things in her life just seem, to be reminiscent of the devil or of hell. Like her old family mansion is called Hell Hole. And think about that one.
She has a devil for a phone.
And then she walks around and she has this huge cloud of green smoke from her cigar. Oh, she's a thin, frail, like nothingness of a woman, and yet she has this crazy presence to her.
Oh God,
she has this energy that just exudes about her, this insane candor to her. And she says, oh, she's always wretched and miserable all the time, but she loves furs. And it just like every single bit of that like is shown in that song, and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely would rank Cruella as like one of the best Disney villains of all time. However, I do think among the villains, she's probably like considered the Red Skull equivalent, because I noticed a lot of the time when they have like team ups, they usually don't include her, and I imagine that's because a lot of the other villains would probably be put off by her. Because granted, a lot of the other villains have done like some, truly evil things and stuff. At the same time, her whole shtick is that she wants to kill animals. And considering that a lot of the Disney villains either have a pet familiar or are animals themselves, I can imagine like a lot of them would be standoffish of her, like if they ever like had an opportunity to team up.
That and Cruella is kind of weak herself. Like, compared to some of the big Disney villains, like even Frollo, who isn't like, he isn't superhuman like some of the other Disney villains, but he has power to him. He's a figure of power, and he has like physical strength and all this other stuff. Cruella has henchmen and she has money, but she doesn't have a lot of physical power. Like, they make that very clear that she's a very frail, somewhat sickly woman.
She has the power of money.
Yeah, but she's also very intimidating. Like, despite the fact that she might be frail, she knows how to like really put the fear of God into some people, and it's like, like Roger tells her off, and she's still like fighting him tooth and nail, even though like she says, oh, go about your own devices, she's still gonna do something. And then there's like that one time where she like grabs the wine bottle out of Horace's mouth and just tosses it into the fire and it explodes. So, yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, she's not the strongest, but she'll put some scare into you.
She's one of the craziest. I mean, she has those crazy eyes, and she'll go and do whatever she wants. And I think a lot of what makes this villain great is just how crazy she is, and like her candor, like the way she talks, like, you fools and you idiots. Like, she is one of the more quotable Disney villains. Certainly one of my favorites. I wouldn't put it in my top 5, but I'd say maybe top 10.
Oh, that's a definite given. I mean, how much more evil can you get than DeVille?
So that's one of the songs of the film. The second song is a commercial for Canine Crunchies. And you might write this off as just, a kind of a diegetic sound, like it doesn't really need to be there, but they actually made me want to buy Canine Crunchies. And I think that's commendable, because like normal commercials today are so incredibly stupid, and watching this, I'm like, okay, if I was watching this back then, I would totally buy Canine Crunchies. Even if I had a cat, I would totally buy Canine Crunchies, simply because it's a catchy tune, and they understood back then, like, we're showing a product, but we actually have to make it sound like a product worth buying instead of just being random.
And here's a nice little tidbit for all y'all out there. When I was looking up who sang the Canine Crunchy song, it was sung by Lucille Bliss. If that name doesn't sound familiar to you, it really, really should, because, let's see, she's been on Disney before. She actually is the original voice of Anastasia from Cinderella. She would go on to voice Smurfette in The Smurfs. And for all you Invader Zim fans out there, she voiced Miss Bitters. So, yes.
Canine Crunchies can't be beat. They make each meal a special treat.
Oh God, I'm just imagining that, and I'm just like, oh God, I'm dead. I'm done.
But yeah, ultimately it's a commercial jingle. The real second song of the film is Dalmatian Plantation, which is the ending song of the film, which I think is just as catchy as Cruella de Vil. Like, I love the sound stylings. It's very classical piano, but kind of jazzy in a way. It has this uptuned quality to it that's energetic, but it's also very laid back at the same time. And this one is just, hey, let's get a bunch of Dalmatians together and have a plantation and, just have fun with it. And it's a fun song. Not the most memorable song in the film, but it's a fun song.
Yeah, it's a shame that it's so short, though. And, but has really good alliteration to it. How many words can you, rhyme with Dalmatian?
It's truly an inspiration. It's
It'll
a
be
sensation. I will say when we get to the sequel, Patch's London Adventure, they actually so they end the film, the original film, with this song, and they begin the Patch's London Adventure with this song.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Like I said, we'll get to that more when we actually get to Patch's London Adventure. But yeah, it's kind of, it's the ending song, so I wouldn't say that it's necessarily not that memorable, because, it's the song you're going out on. But it's it's...
Well, I mean, compared to Cruella de Vil, it's the second most memorable song of the movie.
Yeah, definitely. But it's also funny, because it's just most of the song is just comprised of dog barking.
So those are the 3 songs of the film. Well, not a full-on musical like I want. And while we're not at one of my favorite, musical numbers, I can't wait for Oliver and Company. I think this is musically, this is a great film. The songs really evoke a lot of energy behind them. They're enjoyable, and they finally have a good sound quality compared to if you compare this to Sleeping Beauty or maybe Cinderella. There's a warbliness to the female singers that I just didn't care for sometimes, and here, because of the style of the songs, it's just I could play these over and over.
Honestly, I like the background music as well.
Oh yeah.
Because it's strange. You wouldn't think that a film this simple would have that much diverse background music, but honestly, when I was rewatching this, I remembered every single piece used for each scene. And it's the way that, for instance, when the family is traveling in a really bad snowstorm, and then they finally find shelter at a barn, you listening to the music, you can feel the hardship that they're going through as well, and seeing it as well. And then when they finally reach the barn and you hear that triumphant music, it's oh my god, this is amazing. And all it is puppies just walking through the snow.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's you feel oh, they're walking in the snow, and they finally get into a barn, and they're we don't have to deal with this anymore. But yeah, it's definitely the overall soundtrack is just great. It's and like I said, we were talking before about the opening. I could watch that and listen to it for over and over again. It's just so catchy.
Yeah, it has a lot of nice contemporary piano music in it, and I think it's really cool. Usually, what was it when we were watching the movie and we had to put it on we had to keep it on the main menu for a bit. They were playing the piano music, and normally I get annoyed by the main menu music when it comes to DVDs, because they'll pick a segment of a song or of a certain scene and play it over and over, and it gets really annoying after a while. With this one, it's I don't mind it on a loop, because the song could be played like that and I wouldn't even notice.
Yes, it doesn't hurt also that it was a really light and jazzy thing, so it was it wasn't overwhelming you, it didn't annoy you as much. It's just it was a nice, pleasant tune to have on.
I can definitely agree with that. I think this the background music really works. Speaking on that front, In the past, we viewed movies on the Disney YouTube service. The reason why they were listening to the DVD music over and over and over again was because we're using Disney Movies Anywhere through Vudu. Is it Vudu?
Yeah, that was Voodoo.
Yeah, and Doug was helping me sign in. The problem was, Vudu has this problem with Flash Player. It says, oh, hey, your Flash Player is not enabled, but it doesn't give you a pop-up to enable the Flash Player. So I spent an hour trying to figure out what the hell I needed to do, and I had to go into specific Google settings and all this other stuff. So Vudu, what the hell are you doing? But I got it working, and now that it's working, I have a lot of these bigger Disney movies available there. I don't think they have a lot of the obscure ones. We're probably going to have to go to YouTube for those. But they had
definitely have a lot
101
of the
Dalmatians.
obscure ones.
What's
They
that?
definitely have a lot of the obscure ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if they have them, then we'll use that service, and it'll save me $3. Which I was telling them as soon as we got it working. Well, it was a hassle to set up. Now that it's set up, I'm like, well, at least I don't have to spend $3 on something that is as bad as the last two films that we witnessed, because Ten Who Dared nearly broke me. It was not good.
And I think Swiss Family Robinson almost broke me just because it was so boring and annoying.
You know a film's bad when you skip over an entire scene and nothing is lost.
Yep.
Speaking on that front, though, I think 101 Dalmatians works story-wise because of the pacing of the film. First of all, it's a much shorter film, I think, to cut down animation costs, but it's only an hour and 20 minutes, I think.
Let me see. It's exactly 79 minutes, so that would be an hour and 19 minutes.
Roughly about that. So I think that's actually a really good length for an animated feature, especially after slogging through some of these films. Like, for the live-action films, they have to push it to a live-action length because they had to show it in theaters. If you wanted to show it in theaters, you have to have it a certain length, which means that, you know, the films that were an hour and 45 minutes or 2 hours were padded to reach this length, unless the filmmakers really had something to work with. Here, they could actually work with, you know, that shorter length, and I think it really helps the pacing, because while it's structured like a storybook, everything flows really, really well. From the start, where Pongo and his pet Roger, Pongo is the dog, by the way, so he considers the human his pet. You know, he helps Roger fall in love. You know, they brings him out, they find another dog and another owner. The owners get married, and then it's all about them having puppies, and then Cruella enters the picture, and it's all about her kidnapping the puppies, and then them trying to rescue the puppies. And every single chapter, every single scene really flows into the next, and while there isn't a central conflict until around the 40-minute mark, it doesn't feel like that, because there's this underlying thing of, all right, these dogs are living their lives, and something's gonna happen. Something's gonna happen to ruin this, because like it's mostly told from Pongo's perspective, and everything's so happy and upbeat, and you're just like, something's going to happen. And then Cruella comes in, and from that point on, it's a struggle to keep the puppies away from Cruella. And so, like, that second half of the film just really works in conjunction with the first half.
Yeah, I really can't say that there's any, filler time or any padding whatsoever. I mean, you could probably consider the beginning that, but I mean, it's establishing the characters' relationships to each other, how the couples interact, how the dogs interact with their kids, setting up the Cruella de Vil, and from there on, it's, we have the goal of we have to rescue the puppies, and yeah, like pretty much everything is boom, boom, boom. Like there's maybe a bit of a slow part where they're trying to get the message out through the Twilight Bark, and you see like conversations between dogs, but that's about it. Like it's not like, say for instance, Cinderella, where we get all these unnecessarily long chase scenes with the mice and the cat. Like these scenes actually serve a purpose. Pretty much every scene in the movie serves a purpose, and I really like that. And in this case, them trying to cut costs actually works in their favor.
And what do you think, Doug?
I mean, yeah, definitely. I think the time is mostly used wisely. Um, I know if anything could really be considered filler, probably it's like the Thunderbolt scene, because really nothing happens except maybe you get a little, character development from the puppies during their viewing of it. But yeah, I mean, really, aside from that, I think every bit of time, is used pretty wisely. Oh, and actually, while I'm on the, subject of Thunderbolt, the Canine Crunchies, I wanted to mention earlier, it doesn't so much have to do with the song, but I remember, like when there's like the announcer during the commercial, he's like talking about the product, and they turn off the TV for a split second. It looks like the announcer's aware that the TV's being turned off, like his whole world is ending.
Yeah, the face that he makes. Oh my god.
Oh no, I'm collapsing into oblivion.
But even the canine crunchies scene, even the Thunderbolt scene, that's world building because that shows the world that these people inhabit, and it really showcases the time period. Like a lot like the beginning where we see that they're a flat in London and you see the dog walkers outside. It really does a lot of good world building. Like even these scenes that seemingly don't do anything to the plot, they're there to help engross you in this world, and I feel like there's nothing wasted here.
Actually, when you think about it, the 101 Dalmatians can be considered animation-wise the first modern day like Disney film, like in terms of the day when it was released. Because think about it, all the past animated films, they all took place in like a fantasy land or like olden times and stuff. Like this one actually took place in then modern day.
Yeah, wow. That's kind of silly, kind of crazy to think about.
Kind of funny when you think about it, considering our first live action version of that was the Shaggy Dog. It's like dogs are spearheading like all these first times.
Yeah, I think what really works is that you have this first half to set everything up, and then the second half is just like so much interaction where the puppies are kidnapped and they send a signal on the Twilight bark, and each dog passes on the message and someone finds them. And Pongo and Perdita, I gotta give them credit because the moment they find out where their puppies are, they immediately jump into action, and the rest of the dogs help them as they make their way over to Deville Manor. And I actually looked up a little bit of how far this would be, because they don't specifically state certain things, but they do say the city where they have the last interaction. Between like that last city between them and the flat in London, it's about 3 hours by car. So just the last leg of the journey by car was 3 hours. So for a dog, that would have taken maybe a day. So this was probably a 3-4 day journey at most.
Yeah, I think specifically because they're from London, and they traveled from London to Suffolk, where the mansion is. So yeah, that's about a 3-hour car ride. I mean, I don't know that for certain. I mean, British viewers feel free to correct me, but either way, having two dogs travel that far, especially through certain regions of England, yeah, that's a task. And we actually see them on their journey too, because like it's winter time. They not only do they have to like run around in cold temperatures, but they have to swim across rivers that are partially frozen. And it's like, and they don't care. They just want to get to their kids. You see them like battling it out, and it's like, wow, these are like the best parents in Disney ever.
Yeah, it's really awesome to see, and it's really awesome to see them fighting against Jasper and Horace, and like they do a great job with this action, and then having all these puppies run away from Jasper and Horace and their journey and trying to hide. Like, in a lot of ways, this feels almost kind of like a spy thriller or like something like that, where you have to run away from this villain who's constantly looking for you throughout the entire countryside. And if it's not Jasper and Horace, it's Cruella de Vil. And if they catch you, they're going to skin you. It's like, it's really interesting. It's very dark for Disney standards,
There are
but
stakes.
like,
there are stakes.
Like the second half of this film, I think is great. It goes by so fast, and even the first half. The only problem I do think I have with the first half is I never understood why Cruella is friends with Anita. Like, Anita is just randomly friends with Cruella. They state in the film that they were in school together. But the thing is, they're nothing alike, and I can't imagine them getting along in school.
Yeah, that always confused me as well, because, I mean, I assume that they're both, well, at least, we know that Cruella is definitely rich, and it's assumed that Anita sort of is too, considering she has a maid. I'm going to assume, because Anita's kind of portrayed as, timid and proper and reserved and everything, that Cruella kind of just, latched onto her, and Anita, being too polite to, turn her away, kind of just became her go-to person.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
so
that's the only way I can see their relationship making sense.
I could kind of understand that, but then my second minor problem with that is, what is Cruella's reason for coming to visit? Because every time we see her come in the film, she's just asking where the puppies are, and then she asks to buy the puppies. And I'm like, if I'm Anita, I would wonder, you just came over to see puppies that aren't here. Why? What is your purpose for this? To buy the puppies? But, like, she doesn't advertise the puppies. Like, there seems like a jump in logic from, there needed to be a better reason for Cruella to keep coming over.
I feel like maybe she corresponds with her once in a while, and maybe at that point Cruella was just starting to put in her plan to, make her Dalmatian coat, and she just happened to remember that her old schoolmate owns a Dalmatian, and I assume that Anita must have told her about getting married at some point, and that her husband also had a Dalmatian, so it stands to reason that, they'd have puppies. So, yeah, it is kind of vague, though, and I'm just going to assume at some point she told them, oh, yeah, I got married to this guy, and we both have Dalmatians, and they're expecting puppies, and it just so happened Cruella decided, oh, yeah, I want to make a fur coat, and that just happens to fit into my plan quite nicely. I'm just going to assume it's just, just a convenience of circumstances.
Yeah. I think it's funny. I mean, it's not a big issue, but I think it's funny that she just comes over for 3 minutes and leaves.
Yeah.
Considering how far a drive it is.
Well, I don't think she lives at the mansion. I think she lives in town. The mansion is just, it's like a family inherited thing. It's kind of, because you could tell, given how dilapidated it is, that nobody's lived in there.
That is true. And considering how little she upkeeps it, she probably doesn't have the funds to do so, or doesn't care.
Probably doesn't care.
Yeah.
But other than those problems, I think the story is really well done. I think that, like I said, the beginning sets everything up quite nicely, and everything just builds. Like, there's this looming tension of, what does Cruella want? Why does she want the puppies? And then when she kidnaps the puppies for the fur coat, and like there's a really big tension throughout the entire second half of the film, until until the big climax, which is awesome. Like, she's chasing these puppies in her car, which is slowly degrading, like slowly getting beat up, and like the roof comes off, and this happens, and then it gets run off the road by Jasper and Horace, and like, it's a great climax. My one minor issue, and I know this is kind of nitpicky, is that she's never actually defeated. She's still around at the end of the film.
Yeah, surprisingly, she and her henchmen don't die in a fiery car crash. But yeah, it is one of those things where, yeah, even though the Dalmatians do get away, they are never apprehended, and that did kind of always annoy me, because it's like, what's to stop her from simply just going back there and kidnapping them again?
To spoil, that's actually dealt with in Patch's London Adventure. Like, they actually do, apprehend Cruella and Horace and Jasper, and I think, like, Cruella has a restraining order put on her.
Yeah. Well, I'm just
Whoa.
judging it based on the movie itself.
movie
Keep
itself,
in mind, the sequel didn't come out till decades afterwards.
True.
Oh, and and let me just say one thing. This is my personal nitpick. There is no fucking way she can drive a Bugatti like that. Like no
Especially not
fucking
in
way.
the snow.
There's no way she could ride up the snowbank like that.
Yeah, seriously, like the like, for any of you who's ever seen like a Bugatti of that old model, like, it is basically like the sort of reverse of a limo, with the front being the longest part. And if you ever see the way Cruella drive, there's no fucking way she could drive like that in that car. I'm telling you that right now.
There's no way her car handles like that, especially the way she zooms around corners.
No.
Like, how does her car does not handle that way.
But then again, the car looks evil, so I'm assuming it's part of her hell theme, that it's a car straight out of hell. It's like Hitler's car.
It does look like it has eyes, like it's staring into your soul, and I think that really works for her. But yeah, it would not handle that way. So overall story-wise, I think, while there are minor problems that we all have, I think it still holds up, and I think it moves fast enough to keep your attention. So what do you guys think before we move on to the characters?
Yeah, story-wise, like I said, it's really good, and I mean, it keeps your attention. I mean, this is good for both kids and adults, because it's good for kids that have a short attention span, and it's good for parents that, don't want to get bored by what they have to watch with their kids. And it's engaging because, starting with when the puppies are kidnapped, you're constantly on edge because you don't see them up until the twilight bark reaches that area. So you're left wondering, oh God, what the hell's happening to those poor things? Are they going to make it out? And it's like, even when they're reunited, them trying to sneak their way back while Cruella and the henchmen are looking for him, it's so tense. Like, you're on the edge of your seat the entire time, and then of course that fucking climax with the car chase is like, oh dear God, I'm gonna die of a heart attack before this is over. But yeah, it's very much enjoyable, and yeah, slightly traumatizing. Just slightly.
Doug?
Yeah, I agree. No, it's a good story. I could say, my parents have seen it. They're the ones that, gifted me the VHS as a child, and so definitely it's good for both the parents and the kids. Yeah, I think story-wise definitely moves along at a good pace. And it's, it's relatable. It's, like I said, there are stakes to it. It's like, you kind of wish, if anything, there were a little more time to focus on some of the characters, especially like when they get, into Hellhole and you're introduced to the other Dalmatian puppies, and it's like you maybe know one or two of them. I mean, you barely even know the 15 original. You only have like 4 of them or so that have names. So that's really the only nitpick I have as far as the story goes.
It's one of those films that I can put on, every once in a while and still have a lot of fun with the story. I did grow up with this one. This is one of the few films we've covered on the show that I've seen as a kid, and I loved it back then. I still love it now. One thing that I do want to mention before we start into the characters, I have the Wikipedia page pulled up, and the poster says it's one great big wonderful motion picture, but instead of spelling it WON, It's O-N-E, wonderful.
Yuck, 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 yuck.
This
Oh,
poor
God.
literacy is cute.
That's too bad.
All right. Anyway, Kat, why don't you start us off with the characters? Let's talk about Roger and Anita.
Okay, well, Roger and Anita, let's see. Unfortunately, they're only in half the movie, which is a shame. You have Roger, who starts off as, the single bachelor, the struggling artist, as you will, who writes songs for reasons, I guess.
And somehow he's able to afford that apartment by the park.
Yeah, it's like they say he writes these songs for a living, and I'm like, for what purpose? For the radio? Is it for a commercial? Like, what the hell is his job exactly? And how does it pay so much? Yeah, he's like, bachelor, sort of like obsessed with his work, obsessed with his art and everything. You see that the good thing is that doesn't make him pretentious or snooty or anything, and he's pretty much the same person when he marries Anita. And I gotta say, he's a real funny character, and just how much he can't stand Cruella. Like, I just love how he develops that melody, and he's trying to come up with lyrics for it, and then he sees Cruella, and he just comes up with that whole song on the spot. And then of course and the fact that he can play multiple instruments, like that's awesome. Although I gotta say, he's got to cut down the smoking, man. Like, he's gonna get the cancer, man. Because, like, I shit you not, almost every scene we see him in, he's like smoking a pipe. And actually, a little interesting tidbit: his voice actor Ben Wright, we're gonna see him again in a future Disney film. His final film actually, he voiced Grimsby in The Little Mermaid. So I don't know if you remember him. That was Eric's right-hand man. So.
Oh, okay. Wow, okay.
Yeah, so I like Roger a lot. Anita, I don't like her as much, just because she doesn't have that much of a personality. I mean, she's all nice and polite and everything, but I don't know, it's when it comes to Cruella that I really don't like her, because she acts like such a doormat. Because it's obvious that, Cruella is basically insulting her to her face, and, pretty much shitting on the way she lives and insulting her husband and just being a downright bitch, and Anita just takes it. And even more so, she makes excuses for her. It's like really hard to watch sometimes, especially when it gets to the part where the puppies are born and Cruella's trying to, buy them, and Anita just doesn't have the gonads to up and say, oh, we're not selling them. Like, Roger has to be the one that steps up and says, no, we're not selling them, fuck off. And then later on, when Cruella calls them, to take the heat off herself by saying, oh yeah, I've already been investigated by the police, and they've treated me horribly. Like, Anita sympathizes with her, and it's like, Roger knows that she did it, the dogs know that she did it, and Anita's the only one that like has her head up her ass and is like, oh, but she was already investigated by the police, she can't possibly have done it. I'm like, bitch, you grew up with her. Do you really not see that she is capable of doing this type of thing? It's like,
she's the one who's talked about the puppies the most. Like, it's just
Yeah, it's like I'm kind of glad that they do end up fixing her character in the live action version. But yeah, in terms of the animated one, she's probably the weakest character for me, which is a shame, because when you think about it, this film is actually kind of progressive in their female characters, because Perdita, like, as the wife and mother, she doesn't stay at home just fretting about, worrying about her children. No, she takes action. She goes off after them. She fights the bad guys. And then, of course, you have Cruella, who's like a very strong female character, who not only comes up with her own scheme and pretty much gets away with it, but she takes action and she goes after those dogs herself when her henchmen can't. So yeah, seeing someone like Anita, like, compared to those two, it's kind of
yeah, I agree. Like, I like Roger a lot. Anita's a little bit too laid back, and like she was like that from the very beginning, where she was too prim and proper and polite, and very much like you said, a doormat. And I would have kicked Cruella to the curb long ago, especially if she put out her cigarette in a cupcake that I made or something like that. Like put ashes in my tea. It's just like, no, don't hang out with that devil woman. And like everyone else realizes it but her. So I do agree. I think Roger is the real standout of those two human characters. What do you think, Doug?
Yeah, I agree. Definitely, definitely Roger's the more standout and Anita's kind of background. I will say, I don't know if it's so much that, Anita was defending her as it's like, she's already been investigated by Scotland Yard. Really, what else can we do? That's, that's really my thing on that. But yeah, aside from that, it's, yeah, why the hell are they friends? At least why the hell do they continue to be friends when it's like, she went out of her way to, abduct the puppies and then she's going to kill them. So, But, yeah, I mean, definitely Roger is, the man. It's like he's not even that strong-willed of a person, but it's like when he stands up to Cruella, it's like you see him trembling, but he's like, fuck it, I gotta do it, or she's gonna take him.
Now, Cruella de Vil, on the other hand, as we've stated, is a standout character. As a villain, she's great. As just a character, she's great. But I think what works about her personally, in addition to everything else that we've mentioned, is the fact that she doesn't outright get her hands dirty. Like, she was clearly searched by Scotland Yard. They didn't find anything, but that's because she uses her henchmen to get the job done, and she has them hold off in the DeVille Manor, which is dilapidated. No one would think to look there. Like, she does a lot of things to keep her hands free from all of this mess. And when the henchmen start acting up, she says, "Oh, I'll call the police on you if you do anything bad," because every bit of evidence points to them as the kidnappers. And that kind of makes sense. I think there's a certain amount of ingenuity in her planning and her cunning. And I like how when it comes down to it, yeah, she does a lot of the things herself when she needs to, but only as a last resort. I think she's one of the smarter Disney villains, if really crazy.
Part of me wonders, like, because she refused, because at one point she stated that she refused to pay them until the job was done. I can't help but wonder that if had they actually gone through with the plan and killed the puppies, thus making them into coats, like if she would have turned them in anyway before paying them. Like, I feel like she would resort to that sort of low just to, sort of keep her secret. Plus. But I also have to wonder, though, like, in terms of her plan, because I know she won, like, a dozen coats. Like, was she planning to sell them? Was she planning to keep them? Like, how's it going to look when she suddenly shows up in public with this, like, Dalmatian coat after being suspected of kidnapping puppies?
Yeah, that's another thing that I think the live-action film gets a little bit better. Like, the live-action set in modern day, like, she's a fashion mogul, so obviously she'd create new weird fashion. She has a bunch of weird fashion already. So like that's what makes more sense.
I will say, I mean, also the other 101 Dalmatians that she abducted. Well, she didn't actually abduct them. She paid for them. So I mean, most people probably wouldn't think that because she's already bought them. They wouldn't think twice about, her having abducted the other puppies because she already bought others.
Exactly.
Yeah. That still looks really suspicious,
does,
not to mention it is animal cruelty.
Mm-hmm. But it's an alibi.
I guess so.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ingenuity in her plans, and I think overall she does a good job.
Hey, she didn't get caught,
Yep.
so there's that.
There is that. Before we get into Jasper and Horace, let's bring up something that happens in the film that's never resolved. During the film, Jasper and Horace are watching a TV program called What's My Crime? On the show, they see one of their old prison friends who had a strange crime, and unfortunately, the show runs out of time before they reveal what the crime was, and they never in the film actually tell us what the crime was, even though it's not murder, but it's a form of burglary that isn't burglary.
I know, it's like during the whole scene, that's when the puppies are like escaping with the cat, but it's like I found myself more entranced by what was going on in the show because I'm like, what the hell did this guy do? And like the contestants are asking like the weirdest questions and stuff, and they keep saying like, no, that's not correct. That's not what actually happened. And I'm like, well, then what the hell did? Tell us.
Especially because they have the weirdest way of asking, too. It's like, they don't just say, did you murder someone? Did you, perhaps, was it related to, like, did you do someone in? And I'm like, really?
The people on the show are, like, extremely British. Like, extremely properly British. And it's like... It's like that one lady was stuttering, like, her question, and she's like, did you perhaps, I don't know, well, did you, could you quite have possibly, I'm like, lady, get on with it!
We're running out of
Exactly,
time.
you only have 6 minutes. Come on.
It's like, if you can't think of anything, then shut the hell up.
So, yeah, we never actually learned what the crime was, but I'm wondering if he, like, stole a bridge or something that, that was something that's not technically burglary or...
He probably did like a weird-ass crime like you would see on Radio Dead Air. Man crashes into 7-Eleven to steal banana.
Yeah,
I shit you not, that's a real story, look it up.
Or a naked man goes into house and makes sandwich.
Yes. I guarantee you, that was his crime. He was featured on What the Fuck Is Wrong With You?
There we go. We've solved the case. So Doug, why don't you tell us a little bit about your opinion on Jasper and Horace?
I like them. They are bumbling, but they're, when they do their job right, they do their job right. I mean, they manage to, when they break into the apartment, it's like, or the flat, they don't waste a second. It's like Nanny's trying to close the door on them, and they force their way in, and it's like, so Jasper's taking the initiative of distracting her while Horace is abducting the puppies. So it's like, yeah, they're, kind of dumb in that, and especially like the briefcase, we're with the electrical company, and they've got like what the electrical company spelled wrong, and one of the letters is on top of the other words. So it's like
it's like a punctuation mark, like you see in like 3rd grade.
Yeah. They're bumbling, but they're not like 100% incompetent. They can actually, do the job.
Like,
but then it's like
they're dumb, but they're good crooks.
Yeah. And then it's like, but they're also kind of scary too, especially like when they finish up the show and they go looking after like Tibbs has managed to round up all the puppies to get them out of the mansion. And it's like, it's kind of scary, seeing them, because, it's like, I'll pop them off, you club them. It's like, I want to do the skin and you club them. It's like, it's one of those, you laugh, but it's like, wow, that's kind of dark. It's also another one of those things where they kind of get a little dumber as the, movie progresses, to the fact that it's like, it's their own fault that they, that Cruella is unable to capture the puppies when they're driving, chasing the truck. Because he freaking grabs the wheel, literally, and takes it off of the truck. So now how the hell are they going to drive that thing?
To be fair, like, Jasper was about to crash headlong into that truck and possibly kill them. So I can understand Horace freaking out and wanting... He probably intended just to turn the wheel, but, you know, he just happened to wrench it free and they happened to drive a shitty-ass truck. So that's what happened.
But yeah, I mean, overall, I'd say, you know, Horace and Jasper are, you know, they're fun, you know, kind of comic relief, but at the same time, they can scare you a little.
The thing I love is how Horace keeps correctly guessing what the dogs are doing, and Jasper just brushes it off. It's like they're portraying Horace as being the dumb one because, you know, he's the short, fat one, and that's usually how that archetype goes.
Oh, yeah.
But he ends up correctly guessing what's going on, but then everyone disregards him for it because it doesn't make sense, even though that's what's happening.
I just love how expressive these characters are.
Oh,
They
yeah.
have personality in spades, and it just bleeds into everything they do. Even when they're ransacking and kidnapping the puppies, like, they're enjoying it, they're having fun, and while they're in character, they're still, like, you know, just playing around, and they're having a lot of fun, and they're also very intimidating. Like, they can be both funny and intimidating. It's very rare for sidekicks to be both.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, like, there were a couple incidents that really make me laugh with them. Like when they're about to leave, and you know, Jasper's been, you know, being an asshole, talking to Nanny, and then like she's like, "Oh, now you've gone and done it, love. I wouldn't stay here one more instant if you asked me." And then she throws a tea kettle at him, and he's like, "Not even for a cup of tea." And then, of course, the what you call it, when Rolly like steals the meat out of Horace's sandwich, and he's like, "Hey, Jasper, look!" And Jasper just like nonchalantly like brushes his cigar onto the bread.
Oh, one thing that I never realized before until I looked it up. You know how the puppies called Horace and Jasper the bad uns? Like, I always thought they meant, like, oh, the bad ones, like the bad guys. No, the bad uns is actually their last name.
Huh.
Jasper and Horace Baddens. Like, yeah. I'm like, wow, these two were destined to be crooks.
Yeah, well, when your name, as Linkara says, if your name remotely sounds like something, you will be a villain.
Pretty much. This is Knives. You know he's evil because his parents named him Knives.
So yeah, I think Jasper and Horace are very good characters. There's not really much left in terms of characters. Like, there's a lot of puppies, but while they give, like, individual things to some of the puppies, like Rolly is the fat one, and he's a fat kid.
God.
And
I'm sorry, I can't stand Rolly. Like, he must... Like, his catchphrase is, "I'm hungry, mother. I'm hungry." It's like, we fucking get it. You're fat. You don't have to keep reiterating that fact. Like, he must have said that line, what, like 5 or 6 times throughout the film? It's like, shut the hell up. Like, do you honestly have that much of a one-tracked mind? Like, and
yeah.
and then on top of that, not only is he always saying that line, but he's the one that keeps, you know, almost getting his siblings caught. Because he either like messes up slightly, like at one point the crooks are looking for them, he's trying to hide, but then he like falls out of his hiding spot and starts like whimpering, and then there's another point where like they're rolling in the dust to conceal themselves and he only half rolls himself in it. It's like, dude, come on. And it's like, it sucks because like the rest of the puppies, like the only other 2 puppies I really remember is Patch, you know, and that's based on his aesthetics, and Lucky, you know, because he's the one that always leans up on the TV, and that's the only 2 I remember. Like, the rest of the puppies pretty much just blend together for me. They're like the Scrooge's nephews in a way. They're all like this one like hive mind being in a way.
Yeah, they unfortunately don't have much character, and I don't really like the whole fat kid archetype. Um, I don't really get why people keep using this, especially in Disney. Like, if you look through Disney, there's always the fat kid. And
Yeah.
granted, that is a thing outside of Disney. Like, Monster Squad had a kid just named Fat Kid. Like it's one of those things where like apparently companies just like that archetype. I don't know. But yeah, the puppies don't have much personality. But what I really liked are the last two characters that we have yet to talk about. The Colonel and Sergeant Tibbs.
Oh yeah.
The Sergeant Tibbs is a cat who reports to the Colonel. It's an old sheepdog, and the whole time he's just like, yes, yes. He's like this. He's kind of like an old army man who's kind of senile, but kind of not. Like, he knows what's going on, and he leads the charge, but he always kind of gets himself a little bit messed up. So Sergeant Tibbs has to set him on the right path, and I'm just like, the Colonel is just so much fun.
Oh, Boulder Dash.
He's like if Patton was old and senile. Like, you magnificent bastard, I read your book. Wait a second. No, that wasn't the right passage. Oh, here's the right passage. I read your book.
I just love how like both those animals plus the horse, they're all owned by like a military type family, and because of that they're military themselves. It's like, did their owner put them through like drills and stuff? Is that how this works?
On the double, Tibbs. On the double.
Yeah, same, yeah. Oh, wait, you said Sergeant Tibbs, not Mr. Tibbs.
It'd be funny if it was like we have gangster animals, gangster pugs, and now we have army sheepdogs. Last time in the Swiss Family Robinson, we didn't mention it, but there was a monkey riding a dog. Like this, Disney has some crazy animal stuff, and still the best thing that's ever happened is a dog punching someone in the face.
Well, naturally.
But yeah, the Colonel is a sheepdog, and he's a lot of fun, and I like his character. I like Sergeant Tibbs. I think they do a lot of good job making these characters expressive. Whenever they introduce someone, it's clearly defined. We don't learn a lot about them, but we learn enough that if they were to do more with them, like, I wouldn't mind it. So it's like, altogether, I think what they do with a lot of these characters is just enough to give them personality and drive the movie forward.
Yeah, not to mention if it wasn't for them, the puppies would have died. So they get my vote for like best side characters thus far.
Especially Sergeant Tibbs.
Yeah,
Sergeant
oh my
Tibbs,
god,
like
he
deserves
goes
all the credit.
Yeah, like Jesus Christ, a cat leading 84 puppies. Like, holy shit.
Mhm.
And I love how at one point, like, where the Colonel is, like, he's seeing with all this, like, chaos going on, he's like, Tibbs, what's going on? And, like, Tibbs actually takes a moment to stop and be like, sorry, sir, gotta go, sir, busy, sir. It's like, even when he's, like, running for his life, he's still proper. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention, since I was looking up voice actors and stuff, the voice of Captain, the horse, is Thurl Ravencroft. It's like, it sounds nothing like him.
Thurl Revan, I don't know who that is.
Tony the Tiger.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
He's done many other voices. He sang the Grinch song.
Okay.
Shere Khan.
Oh, wow, yeah, it doesn't sound like him at all. Wow. Tony the Tiger is Shere Khan. Now I'm having an image of a crossover between Frosted Flakes and the Jungle Book.
Oh, God.
Actually, was it the voice of the Colonel, J. Pat O'Malley? He has a huge, like, plethora of characters he plays too. Like, he also voices Jasper in the movie, and not only that, he's been in past and future films we'll get to. He was in Ichabod and Mr. Crane as Cyril Proudbottom and Mr. Winky. He was in Alice in Wonderland as Tweedledee and Tweedledum, the Walrus and the Carpenter. We'll get to see him soon in Mary Poppins as the animated characters during that one anime bit. He'll be in the Jungle Book as Colonel Harthy. So
Wow.
yeah, he he gets around a lot.
Now, the last characters, the last two that we haven't talked about yet, are Pongo and Perdita, and we did kind of talk about them before. They're really great parents. They're expressive, but they kind of have the same problems as Roger and Anita, where Pongo almost feels a lot like Roger and has that same kind of expressiveness, whereas Perdita is just kind of prim and proper.
Yeah, they kind of had the same dynamics going for them. Like Pongo's definitely a lot more fleshed out, especially considering he's, the central character and a lot of the events that happen are because of his own doing. Um, he's definitely funny. I, I like I like how one day he's like, you know what, I'm bored. I am bored of this bachelor life. I shall find myself a mate. Oh, and I guess my pet one as well. And he's just like checking out all this tail that's like going back and forth across his window, and it's like, damn boy, stop being so picky. And of course he falls for like the one Dalmatian that happens to pass by.
Yeah, and like he's the entire reason why any of this happens in the first place. Pongo is a great character.
And he's a great father too.
Yeah, he is a great father. I think in general, like he's very expressive. He's a lot like Roger. There's the part where he realizes how many puppies he has, and he starts like drunkenly walking around, and his face gets all like, oh my god.
At that point, he's like, oh dear God, what have I done?
Pongo, you rascal!
I think Pongo is a great character. I think Perdita is good too. It's just her personality's a little bit too reserved for my taste, but she does more than make up for it in her actions and what she goes through to help out her children. So I like these two characters.
I will say there was one part that was rather sad, or like it tugged at your heartstrings a bit, was when she was after Cruella visits the place, and Pongo goes to comfort her because she hid knowing that Cruella was coming, and she's afraid because she's a first time expectant mother, and unfortunately, as it goes in the dog world, usually once a dog has puppies, the puppies are given away, and knowing that the puppies are most likely going to be given to Cruella, she actually has a moment where she's like, I was so happy about this, but now I wish I wasn't having any. And I'm like, wow, that is wow, for a Disney film, that is definitely like poignant right there. Like you don't see like something like that often, where like an expectant mother will openly admit that. And I know in some ways it sounds kind of bad that like, oh, now I don't want these babies anymore or something, but it's like, no, she's genuinely afraid for her babies, and for good reason. Like that part I always kind of made me like tear up a bit.
Yeah, it's a very sad moment. And there's also another kind of sad moment when they think that one of the puppies has died, but they through some strange method, I don't even know what they do. They
Rubs him.
He rubs him back into life, and that's Lucky. That's the other one that we kind of know his name because like he's the one always looking at the TV. But it's just kind of an odd moment where like we think that one of the puppies has died, but nope, it's an odd fake out moment, and I feel like it is kind of manipulative in a way. It's like
Yeah.
it didn't really need to be there.
I mean, to be fair, that does happen with large litters for dogs. So, but yeah, it is kind of like unneeded drama. I don't know. I looked up like to see like why exactly, because it always confused me. It's like, so wait, you can rub a dead puppy back to life? I think he was trying to do compressions, because I know when you do CPR on a baby, you're supposed to like you're supposed to pat their back, because if you press their chest, it'll actually like kill them. So I don't know if that's what he was trying to do. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Warm him up, maybe. I don't know.
Anyway, we've been talking about this for quite a while. What are your final thoughts on 101 Dalmatians, Mr. Doug?
I love it. I've loved it since I was a child. I think, especially like given what we were talking about with the What's My Crime. It's one of those things that you're gonna like certain things as a child, but then when you grow up, you're gonna notice certain other things. So yeah, I definitely think this is a film that's good for the whole family. Yeah, it's definitely got its darkness, and Cruella's crazy eyes will always be burned into my memory. But it's like I love the artwork there. I love the sounds. I love the music. It's just I will probably always get like whatever new medium that this film comes out on, because I just love it so much.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you wholeheartedly. I don't think I like it as much as you do, but I still do appreciate it for what it is. 'Cause, I mean, this was a film that was technically thrown together on a budget, and the fact that became as popular as it is like quite honestly a miracle. And the fact that give they were able to give us some well-rounded characters in terms of like the dogs and the humans and stuff, and give us one hell of a bad guy with one hell of a villain song. Like they went above and beyond like for such a small project. So yeah, I definitely give this film kudos there. Like I still wouldn't count it among my top 10 or probably not even top 15, but I will watch it if it comes on, and I do appreciate the the live action stuff that spawned from it. So I am looking forward to seeing all the other things as we go on.
Overall, while I do think parts have not aged as well as I would like, I think overall this film still holds up. It is still enjoyable. It still has like a lot to love. And when we were watching it, I had a lot of fun. And then I rewatched it the very next morning, just to keep it fresh in my mind. And it was still enjoyable the second time through. This is one of the films that I honestly can say belongs in your collection. It is a certified classic, and it just does a lot of things right. It doesn't have a lot of big plot points. It's not. It's about people who have puppies, and the puppies are kidnapped. Like it's not a very plot heavy film, which is part of the reason why I kept the plot till the end, because there's a lot of things that stand out more, like the animation and the music and the dubbing and the presentation. Like overall, like that part of the film is what I think stands out the most. But I think it's just a nice, wholesome, fun story. And the villains are great. A lot of the characters are great. It really set a new standard in terms of both animation and character for Disney. And I'm really hoping the next few films can really keep up that momentum. Next time, we're going to be talking about 101 Dalmatians 2, Patch's London Adventure, which is one of the longest titles ever, especially because it has 101 2. Like, it's hard to remember. But yeah, this is supposedly one of the better Disney sequels. When a lot of other people have talked about it, they've said, oh, this is really good. They singled it out. And so far, in terms of the Disney sequels that we've seen, the only two that I can that I can really classify as good have been Cinderella 3 and Bambi 2. I can't really think of any other good sequels that we've talked about in terms of animated features. So, hopefully this is better. It's been a while since we've sat down and taken a look at an animated Disney sequel. Once again, they're notorious for being bad, but this is supposedly one of the really good ones. We will see. Next time, with all of that being said, I am Zenith Rule.
I'm Kat MacBerry.
I'm One Sat Morn, or Doug MacBerry.
And we will see you guys next time when we continue this huge 101 Dalmatians marathon with 101 Dalmatians 2, Patch's London Adventure. God damn, that's a mouthful. Anyway, have a good one, guys.
TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Hey, this is Megami33. Thank you for watching Zenith Will Review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. If you like what you see, check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/ZenithWillReview.